This video is brought to you by Sailrite. These dining room chairs with wicker seats can easily be transformed by making a removable chair cover from fabrics available from Sailrite. In this video, we're going to be showing you the steps required to make a removable dining chair cover. Each and every step is shown in detail. We'll show you how to pattern from the chair so a cushion in fabric can be cut to the correct size. Then we'll show you how to take measurements from your chair for a cover that truly fits perfectly. To finish off the cover, we'll add a Velcro closure system and add a touch of class by sewing a decorative piping or fringe on the sides. Watch this video and you'll be able to make your own removable chair covers. You can change up the style of any room by removing or replacing the cover to another style and color of fabric. Sailrite stocks thousands of fabrics in a 71,000 square foot warehouse in Indiana. Popular brands for upholstery applications like Sunbrella Furniture Fabric, Waverly, Tommy Bahama, PK Lifestyles, P. Kaufman, Dina Home, Breeza, and much more. Visit the Sailrite website and select from hundreds of fabrics for your favorite brands, colors, patterns, and styles. If you need a fabric sample for comparison's sake, go to the Fabrics landing page and click Add Sample to Cart. You'll receive a 4x4 sample in the mail so you can see exactly what that fabric looks like. Let's get started and show you how to make a removable dining chair cover. To show you how it's done, here's Angela. We'll be using pattern material to cut our foam and our fabric. We're going to get some rough measurements of the seat bottom, and then we're going to cut our pattern material slightly oversize. Next, we'll lay the pattern material on top of the seat bottom and use a Sharpie marker and mark around the entire perimeter of the seat bottom. Angela will carefully mark around the seat back where it protrudes through the bottom of the chair. Once you're happy with the pattern, you can take it and cut it with scissors to the correct size. We've decided to add a layer of foam to add to the comfort of the chair. We're going to use a compressed polyester available from Sailrite. The pattern that we cut is exactly the size of the seat bottom. However, we want the foam to be a little bit oversized. We'll be adding a 1/2 inch to the two sides and 1 inch to the back edge and the forward edge. By cutting our compressed polyester a little bit larger, it usually comes out with a snug fit and looks a little bit more attractive. Here you see Angela marking away from the pattern material by 1 inch. That's the width of this yardstick, and she's using a Sharpie marker to mark on the compressed polyester batting. On the sides, she's going to strike a line free-handed a 1/2 inch away from the pattern material. A foam cutter or an electric kitchen knife will not work with the compressed polyester batting or foam. You must use scissors. To do this, we insert the scissors halfway through the polyester batting and cut the top half. Then we insert it at the bottom once we've done that to cut the remainder. If you're using a thicker polyester batting, let's say 4 inches, you may have to do that 3 times. Now place the foam on top of the chair and make those notches for the seat back or the legs of the chair. Be sure the foam is centered on the seat when doing this. Then we'll cut those notches out with scissors. Then check one more time to be sure that you're happy with the way the foam sits on the seat. Now that you have a foam piece that's perfect, you can use that as a pattern to make more if you have multiple chairs. Whether you choose to use foam or not, you still need to take some measurements. Our chair cover will have a top section and 2 side boxings that will be sewn together. We'll be taking measurements from where we want the bottom of the cover to end and measure up to the seat's top surface. We need to include foam in that measurement if it's being used. Angela has placed this ruler where she wants the bottom of the cover to stop. This is where we think it'll look best for this chair. And we measure up And we are using foam, so ours measures 4.5 inches, and we want to add a 1/2 inch for a hem that will be placed at the bottom. So on our paper, we'll write 5 inches. Here at the back, she's determined that she wants it to stop there, and it's 3.5 inches, so she's going to add a 1/2 inch to that, which makes it 4 inches. For the sides, we need to add 1 inch. So she's measured here, and that's 4.5 inches. So she needs 5.5 inches for that side. That's the forward side. She also needs to take a measurement at the back side, because chairs aren't always the same in shape and size. So here at the back, she puts the end of the ruler where she wants the cover to stop, and there it measures approximately, looks like 3.5 inches. She is not compressing the foam much. So there you want 4.5 inches. So she's going to mark that on her paper. Now that we have those measurements, we can take our pattern and we will extend it 4 inches on the back side and 5 inches on the front side of that pattern. The side boxing will be cut to the maximum width, which is 5.5 inches for our situation. Let's concentrate on the top plate first and then the boxing later. Angela has laid the pattern material on the underside of the fabric that was chosen for this chair, and she's marking the fabric 5 inches on this, the forward edge of the chair, and then she'll strike a line at that point. She's using a grease pencil, however, a number 2 pencil can often be used depending on the color of fabric. Now she's positioned the pattern material on top of that line at the bottom, and she strikes a line right on the edge of the pattern material there, and then marks up 4 inches as what was determined in our previous measurements for our chair. We'll strike a line at that location as well. We're patterning for the top of the chair, and we are going to sew boxing onto the side, so we need to add a 1/2 inch to this top pattern for the seam allowance. So here Angela is freehanding a 1/2 inch along the side of our pattern material. She's freehanding a 1/2 inch away from the edge of the pattern material. At this point, she's ignoring the cutout that will allow the leg or the back of the chair to come through. Also, notice how she extends the line where there is no pattern material to join that line that is 4 inches back. And she does the same thing on the opposite side. Along the front of the chair where we have 5 inches, she also extends the lines there as well. Along the front 2 corners, it's not a bad idea to take in the fabric a 1/2 inch there to give a better and tighter fit along the leg. So she's going to use this yardstick, and she's going to make a mark from where the pattern begins all the way down to the edge along the front, and that diagonal line is a 1/2 inch in from the edge she struck down earlier. Then we're going to use the Sailrite Edge hot knife to cut out this fabric, because this is a synthetic fabric and it will cut with a hot knife, and that helps to prevent the unraveling of the fabric. Now Angela places the pattern material back on the underside of the fabric, and she marks the location for that notch, which will allow the leg or the back to protrude through our cover a 1/2 inch away from the pattern material. She's freehanding this. Then she'll extend the line all the way up the back portion of the chair. She'll do that on both sides. And then she'll use the Sailrite Edge hot knife and cut that section out on both sides. If you don't have a hot knife like this, you could use a wood burning tool or a soldering gun. Also, if you're using a cotton fabric, it's not a good idea to use a hot knife because it'll burn. So make sure it's a synthetic fabric. Note also, she's using a ruler, a metal ruler, to prevent the hot knife from damaging the tabletop below. We're going to place that pattern material on our fabric yet one more time, and we're going to concentrate on the corners where the seat back has to protrude from the fabric. Here at this location, we want to mark the fabric so we know where to stop sewing the boxing onto the top plate. So she's just highlighting the corner again, but she's going to place arrows on the side to indicate where she needs to stop sewing. We're now done patterning for this top plate. Now we can use that fabric we just patterned to make a permanent pattern out of the pattern material so that we can make multiple chair covers or change up the style at any time. We want our two pieces of boxing to be the length of this top plate that we just patterned. It can be a little bit longer, it doesn't really matter, but we just need it to be at least as long as that. Now we're measuring the width of the boxing. Remember, we've chosen the maximum width, which was 5.5 inches for our situation. We'll be cutting down the other end to 4.5 inches in a later step. We need to make 2 strips, 1 boxing for each side. Since our fabric is a synthetic fabric, we'll use the serrate edge hot knife and cut out each one of those boxing strips so the edges are sealed and they will not unravel. Place those strips on top of each other so the right side is facing each other. A little earlier in the video, we took a 1/2 inch in at the corners of the top plate and the forward side. Here we're taking a 1/2 inch in on the boxing on one side of the boxing. We've marked that, and now we're cutting both boxings at the same time with the serrate edge hot knife. To create a pleasing corner when sewing the boxing to the top plate, we will cut a curve at the corner of the boxing. We're using a roll of tape label to mark a smooth corner. Then we will cut it with the serrate edge hot knife. When cutting multiple layers with a hot knife, sometimes they are melted together and bonded. All you need to do is peel them apart, and then you can use them as separate pieces again. Again, if you're doing multiple chairs, you may want to pattern off of this boxing that we just created. So we're taking it over to pattern material, going to mark around it, and we're going to save our pattern material for multiple chairs or changing of colors. Notice that the outside surfaces are facing each other, and we have the bottom edge of the boxing and the bottom edge of the top plate, which is actually the forward edge, facing each other. Notice that Angela flipped the panel. The top plate is on top and the boxing is underneath. We're going to use the Deluxe Magnetic Guide here as a fence. This helps to keep our stitch a 1/2 inch away from the raw edge of the fabric. We're going to sew it with a straight stitch approximately 6 millimeters in length. At the beginning of our sewing, you'll notice that we did some reversing to lock the stitch in place. Now notice carefully what we're doing. The boxing on the underneath side, Angela is being careful to pull it around. Here we're coming to the corner of the curve that we created, and she's keeping the top straight, and the boxing she's pulling to the side or up against that magnetic guide. If you don't have the magnetic guide, you can put a masking tape on the bed of the sewing machine and use that as a guide. And then as she gets to the straightaway, it becomes a lot easier. And when we do the boxing on the other side, the boxing will be on the top. So you'll see how it's done with the boxing on the top as well. Here the boxing is on the underside. And there's that arrow that we marked earlier. We want to stop sewing there, and we're going to do some reversing to lock the stitch in place. Turn the cover so that it's right side out, and here's what that corner looks like. Looks nice. Now we'll install the boxing to the opposite side. Here's the bottom edge. Bottom edge of the top plate on the underside and bottom edge of the boxing on the top side. We'll start there at that corner, work our way to the curve that we made at the corner of that boxing, and you'll notice how she pulls the boxing around this time so that it's flush with the edge of the top plate on the bottom side. We're sewing a 1/2 inch from the edge, and we're using the Deluxe Magnetic Guide as a fence to keep the fabric a 1/2 inch in from the needle. Because the boxing's on the top side, our arrow is on the underside. So here she's taking a look to see where the arrow rests, and she puts her fingernails right on top of that arrow so she knows where to stop sewing. Then she'll do some reversing there as well. Now both boxings are installed to the top plate. We'll place the cover on top of the chair with the foam. We've opted to use the condensed polyester foam, if you have foam at all. Oh, here's what the corners look like. Don't they look great? We're not quite done. Now we need to position it so that we can determine where the back should stop. So we're going to pull both sides of the boxing. Notice there's excess boxing. Now we're going to mark it with that soapstone pencil. Because there's extra boxing, it makes it easy for us to do this with one hand. We mark it a 1/2 inch away from the leg or the back of the chair.
1/2 inch. Pass, because it's going to end right here.
This is where we'll be putting a hem. To do that on both sides. Fold the fabric rather taut. At that mark, we'll cut it with the hot knife straight up to that mark. So this is a straight cut, and we'll do that on both sides. Don't throw away the extra material that we have. We're going to be using that in a later step. Now we're going to concentrate on the 4.5 inches that we need for our chair. So here at the very end that we just cut off, we're going to mark it to 4.5 inches. Now we're going to take our yardstick and measure all the way to the forward portion of the boxing, all the way back to that mark we placed on the trailing edge of the boxing. So right there at the corner where it's sewn to the front of the plate, and we'll strike a line, and then we're going to cut that with the serrate edge hot knife. We'll do that same procedure to the opposite side. We're going to be creating a single hem around the perimeter, and here at the corner where the back of the chair has to come through, we need to cut some relief notches. So we're just using the hot knife to do that. We'll cut about 3, and don't go all the way to the line. Stop short. Next, starting at the end of the boxing that's just been sewn onto the plate, we'll fold it over approximately 1/2 inch, and we'll sew a straight stitch there, reversing at the beginning. And we'll come up to the curve that we just created those relief notches in, and we'll fold the fabric back there to create a single hem as well. Notice what she does when she gets to the corner. She buries her needle, she lifts her foot, she rotates the fabric, she lowers her foot, and she continues to sew. That's a nice way to make a corner. For your information, we're using the Sailrite 111 sewing machine with the MCSCR power system. Phenomenal power and extreme slow speed control. However, you can use a home sewing machine as well. Sew all the way to the end of that top plate here. Now we're also going to put this back in the sewing machine and create one more stitch just to make sure it's secure there, because this area will have a little bit of tension. So we're going to start right here at the edge of the boxing where it's been sewn onto the plate, and we're going to sew just a little bit inside that first stitch, still securing the hem in place. This will just reinforce it a little bit. To sew this cover, we're using a monofilament Text 40 thread, which is a clear thread, and a number 16 needle. You could also use a V69 nylon thread as well. Then we'll do that same procedure to the opposite side. We won't show that. Now let's create a hem on the end of the boxing. So we're going to fold that over 1/2 inch and sew down there as well. You'll want to do that to this end and also the other end, the end of the boxing on the opposite side. We'll not show that. And we can get ready now to install our decorative piping, or fringe, whatever you've chosen. We're going to use the decorative piping that is Sunbrella, available from Sailrite. Before we can sew the Sunbrella decorative piping in place, we need to account for the Velcro that will be sewn onto the end of the boxing. So here Angela is marking the width of the Velcro. We're using a 1-inch Velcro here. So she marks it so she knows where to start that Sunbrella decorative piping. We'll start it 1 inch away from the end of this boxing, so she creates a 1/2 inch fold. She sews about 1 inch in, and then she'll lay the decorative piping right on top of that and begin sewing it in place while she's creating the 1/2 inch hem. So there she creates the 1/2 inch hem. Now she places the tail end, or the flange, of the Sunbrella decorative piping in place and sews as close to the piping cord as possible. The stitch does not necessarily need to be right up against the piping cord. In fact, it shouldn't be, because if it were, you'd probably miss the hem on the underside. So we're leaving the standard foot in place on this, the Sailrite 111 sewing machine with the MCSCR power system. Please note that when she wants to create her hem again, she buries her needle to the thickest part of the shaft. That way she doesn't lose the position she was just in when she sewed it. Then she creates the hem, and then she continues to sew. When she comes to the spot where the top plate joins the boxing, she's going to fold the fold over on top of the boxing.
Onto the side. pieces.
This procedure is pretty easy, but take your time for a better result. This job is easily sewn with a home sewing machine. We are using an industrial sewing machine, the Sarat 111, but a home sewing machine will sew this perfectly. We highly recommend the Sarat Ultrafeed sewing machines if you're looking for a good heavy-duty walking foot sewing machine, but don't hesitate to do this job with a home sewing machine. And here we are coming to the other end of the boxing, and we will stop about an inch short there as well because we have to sew Velcro in place here. It is extremely important to use a hot knife to cut this umbrella decorative piping. If you do not, it will unravel on the ends. If you don't have the Sarat Edge hot knife, you could use a wood burning tool, a soldering gun, or you could heat up a knife with the flame and then use it to touch the ends of the piping as well. She looks great. We have yet to finish the back portion of this cover, but first let's fit it on the chair. We're fitting it on the chair only so we can show you exactly what we're going to be doing next. We're going to be sewing some tabs in here so that we can wrap this around and Velcro it. To add little tabs to this, measure the boxing. If you have 3.5 inches, you need to add a 1 inch to that. So make it 4.5 inches by 3 inches in length. So whatever your boxing is, add 1 inch and then make it 3 inches. We're going to use that scrap fabric that we saved earlier. We'll cut it with a hot knife and we'll have 2 tabs. Now we're going to take those tabs and apply double-sided tape. This will help us to hold the hem in place prior to sewing. We're going to apply it to all 3 sides. We'll be creating a hem on both sides that will equal the size of the boxing on the side. So here Angela created a hem there, and now she's creating a hem on the opposite side so that it is perfectly even with the boxing. This fabric has a slight pattern, and notice that this little piece is going the opposite direction of the boxing. That's intentional. We'll show you that next. Now create approximately a 1/2 inch hem at the end. We flip this little piece so the outside surface is facing up, and we'll place double-sided tape on this end so that we can baste it to the plate, the top plate, not the boxing. Now you'll see why the pattern was created this way. We're also going to place it a 1/2 inch up because we're going to have to put a hem on that edge. This little tab was created from 3 inches, so it'll equal 2.5 inches approximately with that hem. So we'll position it about 2 inches from the end of the plate. Measure it now, and you'll notice that it's 2 inches. Follow that same procedure for the opposite side. Angela has flipped the cover so the wrong side is facing up, and now she'll place double-sided tape along the back edge of the top plate. And then she'll create a 1/2 inch hem there. This 1/2 inch hem should equal or run alongside those tabs we just installed. So it should be flush. Before we can sew this umbrella decorative piping to the back edge, we need to sew these tabs in place. We're going to sew down the 2 sides of the hem and secure that tab to the top plate, and we're going to leave the end hem unsewn because we're going to be installing Velcro there at a later step. We'll need to do that to this tab and also the tab on the other side, where we'll not show sewing that tab. Notice that when she gets to the corner, she buries her needle, lifts her foot slightly, lowers her foot, and continues to sew. Make sure you reverse the beginning and the end of your stitching. Okay, now we can sew this umbrella decorative piping down in place. We'll start this piping so that it's flush with the end of the tab we just sewed on. And we'll sew it in place just as we did previously. The hem has already been basted in place, so we don't have to worry about that. As we discussed earlier, this piping must be cut with a hot knife, wood burning tool, or a soldering gun to keep it from unraveling. So here at the end, We're going to use that metal ruler to prevent damage to the tabletop, and we're going to use the Sailrite Edge hot knife to cut the piping to size so that it's flush with the end of that tab. The only task left is to sew the Velcro in place. Here we're using a 1-inch white Velcro. We've placed double-sided tape on it so that it can be held in place. We can baste all these Velcro tabs in place prior to sewing. And we baste it here to the boxing, that's the looped side. And then we'll baste the hook side to the little tab that we just created that has been sewn to the plates. We're going to use basting tape to hold that in place as well. Now we'll sew down the two long edges of both the hook Velcro and the loop Velcro on both sides, reversing at the beginning to lock our stitch and reversing at the end to lock our stitch. And that's all that's required to secure the Velcro in place. Do that same procedure for the other 3 Velcro strips. This removable dining chair cover is now complete. Coming up next is how to fit the cover on the chair and also the materials list that was used to make this cover. That's coming up next. As you can see, these covers are very easy to install on the chair. We've placed the compressed polyester on the chair and then just wrap the fabric around the seat backs and Velcro it in place. That's all there is to it. Change up the style of any room just by changing the style of fabric or color of fabric. You can easily go back and use the patterns that you used earlier to remake new covers. There are hundreds of fabrics that can be chosen at the Sailrite website for this type of application. Here are some of the popular brands. Here's a material list of the items that we use to build this removable chair cover. For every yard of fabric, you can accomplish 2 chair covers. And we've chosen to use a monofilament thread, though a nylon V69 thread will work as well. For more videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite webpage or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel today. It's your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos possible. Thanks for your support.